And I love crazy texting robots.
Crazy texting robots. Maybe that's the title, TBD.
All right.
Welcome to the first episode of my new podcast, Agentic DevOps. This episode is kicking off what I think is going to be a big topic for my entire year, probably for the next few years, around wrangling AI into some usable format for DevOps. You've probably heard of AI agents by now, or the MCP protocol. I guess I should just say MCP, since P stands for protocol. And these two things together are creating potentially something very useful for platform engineering, DevOps, and that stuff. It has so much potential that in the first quarter of 2025, I kind of thought this was going to be a big deal. This was going to be, if we can figure out how to keep these things from hallucinating and going crazy in our infrastructure, this could potentially be the AI shift for infrastructure that I was waiting for. So started this podcast. We recorded our first episode at KubeCon at the beginning of April 2025. And this is going to be a series of very specific episodes around getting AIs to do useful automation and work for DevOps, platform engineering, infrastructure management, cloud, all those things beyond just writing YAML, right? So the intro for this podcast, there's a separate episode for intro. It kind of goes into my whole theory of why I think this is going to be a thing. And this episode, we really try to break down the basics and fundamentals for those of you that are catching up, because it's a lot. There's a lot going on. It seems like we have announcements every day this year around AI agents or agentic AI, however you want to call it. I'm calling it Agentic DevOps and hoping that name will stick. Now, this episode, since it's from the beginning of April, and it is technically now just getting released at the beginning of June. We're a little bit behind on launching this new podcast. I think everything in it's still relevant. There's just been a lot more since. And I don't know the frequency yet. I don't know how often this podcast is going to happen. It could be potentially every other week. It could be weekly. I just don't know yet, because we're not going to do the same thing here as on my usual podcast. If you're someone who knows that one, DevOps and Docker Talk, that I've been doing the last 7 years. That one is still going to have AI in it, but this one is very specific. And there might be a few episodes that have syndication, or whatever you want to call it, of the episodes on both podcasts. But most of the time, we're going to keep the focus of just everything DevOps, everything containers on the DevOps and Docker Talk show. And this one is going to be very specific around implementing useful AI-related things for agentic DevOps, or automating our DevOps with robots. So I hope you enjoyed this episode with Nirmal from KubeCon London.
Hey, I'm Bret, and we're at KubeCon.
We are?
Hi, Nirmal.
I'm Nirmal Mehta. I'm a principal specialist solution architect at AWS, and these are my views and not of my employers. But this episode is all about
AI agents for DevOps and platform engineering. Ooh. So let's just start it off real quick with, what is an AI agent? Okay, so we've heard of AI. We know AI, Gen AI, ChatGPT. We've talked about running LLMs, running inference on platforms.
Yep.
And that we are managing the workloads that provide other people's services.
Absolutely.
So how is AI agents different than that?
This is in terms of bleeding edge.
Yeah.
This is it, right?
Yeah.
Like
a year ago, no one had this term. 6 months ago, I don't think anybody was talking about it. Very few people.
Yeah.
Very few people.
And we've seen it in the news, a lot of vendors and big companies announcing agentic. That's another term.
AI.
So AI agents, agentic. It's giving your LLM, like your Chat GPT or your Claude or a local LLM,
Llama, yeah,
access to run commands on your behalf or on its behalf.
Yeah, and we call those tools. That if you hear that word,
yeah,
that's like the generic tool. Like, I guess a shell could be a tool.
Correct. Reading a file could be a tool.
Accessing a remote API of a web service is a tool.
Yep. Searching could be a tool.
And so these tools, what makes that different than what we've been seeing in our code editors?
Yeah.
How is that different?
I'm a platform engineer and I want to build out an EKS cluster using Terraform. That's what we use. So I'll ask, let's say Claude or ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I'm a platform engineer and I want to build a production-ready EKS cluster. Please create the assets I need. And it will spit out some Terraform YAML, right?
Yeah.
And
it's writing text.
it's writing text. And there'll be a little button. I copy that, put it in, or there'll be, if you're using Cursor or all these other tools, you can put it into some TF file. I can then take that and I can ask the LLM, what's the command that I need to run to apply this Terraform, to actually stand up what's described in this Terraform. And it'll spit out, okay, you want to do Terraform plan and then Terraform apply and all that, Terraform init or whatever. And I'll just copy those commands and check them and write them myself. So the LLM is not executing anything on my behalf.
I'm on your behalf.
Agent would be defining a tool set. So I could define a tool called Terraform or a tool called Shell. I could describe what that tool does in natural language.
Okay.
And then I can give the LLM system a list of these tools and their descriptions and tell it, okay, back to the same scenario. I'm a platform engineer and I want to create an EKS production cluster using Terraform, and I want you to create it for me. Because it has the access to those tools now, it internally reasons, okay, I need to create some Terraform, I need to validate it in some kind of way, and then I need to execute this Terraform. Is there any tools that I have in my tool?
In this case, sorry, the I is you're referring to yourself as the AI, right?
Yeah.
There's no longer the human doing this, right?
No,
we gave it instructions and we sit back.
From the perspective of the LLM, or the Gen AI tool itself, the LLM system, that's the I in this scenario.
I robot.
The LLM is deciding, the Gen AI tool is looking at its list of available tools and matching what it needs to. It's reasoning about what the end goal is, and it looks and says, there's this tool called Terraform that allows me to use infrastructure as code to deploy resources on the cloud. That sounds like what I need, maybe. And it generates the Terraform just like it did the first time around. It knows what command to run. It generates the command. And then the magic here, a little box will show up and says, do you want me to execute this on your behalf?
You click the button.
You click the button, and then it executes that Terraform apply. And it sounds very simple, but it's a very different paradigm in terms of thinking about how we interact with infrastructure or systems in general, like broadly systems in general. Because we are in this way of looking at it or thinking about it, I, as the human, are no longer executing those commands, trusting to a certain extent that the LLM can figure out what it needs to do and giving it a guardrailed set of tools to use and execute.
Yeah, we're given the chaos monkey act. I mean, it's automation, right? We could actually classify this as just automation. It just happens to be figuring out what to automate in real time, rather than the traditional automation where we have a very deterministic plan of steps that are repeated over and over again by a GitHub Action Runner or a CI/CD platform or something. Yeah.
And the agent part is the piece of software that enables the LLM to execute. And pulls this all together. And so back to what I was talking about with the infrastructure, and there was a part where I said, okay, how do we define what tools are available for the agent system to use? And how do I want the agent to call those tools and reason about them? And there's a protocol called MCP, Model Context Protocol, just outlining a standard way of defining the tools, the system prompt for that tool, and a description.
And this is like an API. We're like defining the spec of an API.
It's a defined spec of an API. And the adoption of that API is just exploding right now, essentially.
So if you're not, okay, sorry, let me back up a second. That's a very valid point, because that's the reason I wanted to record this. I don't want to be a hype machine, but
Correct.
I'm super excited right now. If you can see inside my enthusiastic brain, I've only been paying attention to this for a little over a month. If you asked me 2 months ago what an AI agent was, I'd say, I don't know, a robot that's AI? I don't know. I now think I've got a much better handle on this. I've been spending so much of my life right now deep diving into this, to the point that you and I are talking about changing some of the focus this year on these topics.
Absolutely.
Because I think this is going to dominate the conversation. There's going to be a lot of predictions in this. We're not going to talk forever because it's going to need to be multiple episodes to really break down what's going on here. But we now have the definitions: AI agents, what are tools? The protocol behind it is essentially MCP right now, although that's not necessarily going to be the only thing. It's just the thing right now that we're agreeing on by one company.
Exactly. We have to caveat this with, this is early like Docker days.
This is like Docker in day 60, right?
Yes.
Like we're like right after PyCon in 2013 when he gave that demo to Solomon. Like we all saw it and didn't understand it fully, but it felt like something.
Right.
And like you and I both, that's why we were early Docker captains, is we saw that as a platform shift. We've seen these waves before over our careers of many decades that we earned with this gray beard status with effort and toil. And I feel like this is maybe the moment that was the moment of 2013. And I'm not alone in that feeling. So.
And there's, just to be clear, there's massive differences between like paradigm shifts in terms of like virtualization, cloud, containers, and the tooling of software development and systems development and systems operations. It's still in that same vein, but
this is not replacing infrastructure or containers or anything like that. This is just going to change the way we work.
Correct. And also it's broader than just like IT infrastructure. Like this has implications with software design or application, like what an application does. And I want to think of this as a teaser trailer to the subsequent
a new
episodes.
series.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to have to come up with a name. I'm toying around with the idea of agentic DevOps and just classifying that as as the theme of certain levels of podcast episodes.
Heard it here first.
This
is agentic DevOps. Another term we're seeing is AI for ops. Again, this is early days. None of this is like set in stone.
So and if you're at KubeCon today with us, if you were here at this conference all week, AI was a constant topic, but it wasn't about this. Actually, there was only one talk in an entire week that even touched on the idea of using AI to do the job of a DevOps or operator or platform engineer. Like what we're talking about at KubeCon for the last 3 years has been how to run the inference and build the LLM models. And so we're just still using human effort to do that work. But this, I feel like, I'm going to draw the line in the sand and say this is the month, or definitely the year, that kicks off what will be a multi-year effort of figuring out how we use automated LLMs, essentially, with access to all the tools we want to give it, with the proper permissions and only the permissions we want to give it, to do our work for us in a less chaos monkey way, right? Like less chaotic way. This thing can easily go off the rails.
Absolutely.
I will probably reference in the show notes Solomon Hike's recent talks about how they're now using Dagger, which is primarily a CI/CD pipeline tool. So he's talking, and a lot of my language is actually from him, iterating on his idea of what this might look like when we're throwing a bunch of crazy hallucinating AIs into what we consider a deterministic world.
Correct. I think with containers and cloud and on the infrastructure APIs we were chipping away and really aiming at deterministic behavior with respect to infrastructure. Ironically, maybe not ironically, I don't know. Now we're introducing a paradigm shift that reintroduces a lot of non-determinism into a place that we have been fighting non-determinism for a long time.
We have been working to get rid of all that, and now that's why I keep saying chaos monkey, because we're throwing a wrench into the system that is, in some ways, feels like we're going back to a world of, I don't know, what's the status of the system? I don't know. This will probably be another episode. I feel like this agentic approach, where we actually can have the potential to pit the LLMs against each other, right? And have different personas of these agents. One is the validator, one is the tester, one is the builder, and they can fight amongst each other, and it all works out. It actually happens to actually work out better. And so if you're like me, and for the last 3 years of understanding ever since GPT 3.5 or whatever came out, we all saw ChatGPT as a product. And then we started with GitHub Copilot. So we started on this road. As a DevOps person, I haven't had a lot to talk about because I'm not interested in which model is the fastest or the most accurate. Because you know what? They all hallucinate. And still, even today, years later, code agents, and you can see this on YouTube. You watch basically thousands of videos on YouTube of people trying to use these models to write perfect code, and they just don't. And so we in ops, we look at that, I think, and the people I talk to, even for years now, are like, we're never going to use that for ops. But now, my opinion has changed.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and your gut reaction is, wait, we have like APIs that are deterministic. Like we can just call an API. We can have an automation tool call an API to stand up infrastructure. And like, why do we need to recreate like another layer that makes it non-deterministic and looks like an API but isn't an API, and you don't really know what it might do or which direction it might go. And you're feeling, I don't know, that doesn't seem like it would solve any problems for me, and it seems like it might introduce a lot of problems. You're in the right place because that's exactly what we're going to explore. One thing for sure though is it's here. I feel like as good engineers, as good system admins and operators,
we love our crafts. We look at this as an art form of brain power and reaching for perfectionism in our YAML and in our infrastructure optimization and our security.
And we have a healthy sense of skepticism on new tools, new processes, new mechanisms. When availability of your services is paramount and reliability, you want to introduce new things in a prudent manner. And so we're going to take that approach, but we're not going to dismiss that this exists. Clearly, there's a lot of interest, energy, integration happening, experimentation happening, and some people are already starting to see value. And we're going to explore with you where that goes.
This, just to be clear, this is KubeCon April 2025, and almost no one is talking about this yet. It feels like it's right under the surface of a lot of conversations, and a lot of people maybe are thinking about it, but I'm not even sure that we're honest with ourselves around that this is coming whether we like it or not. And only because, not only, but one of the large reasons is business. Okay, let me back up. You know how in a lot of organizations, Kubernetes became a mandate, right? So there's lots of stories that came out over the course of Kubernetes' lifetime of teams being told that they need to implement Kubernetes. It didn't come from a systems engineering approach of solving a known problem. It came down because an executive decided that they read a CIO magazine article that said Kubernetes was a cool new thing and they did it, right? I hear this all the time. I confirmed this multiple times this week with other people. And I now feel like we're not talking about it yet, but I did hear multiple analysts say their organizations that they're working with expect that we are going to reduce the number of personnel in infrastructure because of AI. The only way that's possible is if we use agents to our advantage, because we can't, I still don't believe we're replacing ourselves. I don't think the agents will ever, in the near term, and as far as we can see out, let's say 5 years, they won't be running all infrastructure in the world by themselves. They can't turn on servers. Maybe you can actually pixie boot and do a power on, PoE or whatever, but like we still need someone to give them orders and rules and guidelines to go do the work. But to me, I'm starting to wonder if very quickly, especially for those bleeding edge organizations that are looking to squeeze out every cost optimization they can of their staff, that they're going to be mandated to not just take AI as a code gen for YAML, but to start using these agents to increase the velocity of their work. One of my stories is, over the last 30 years, I do this in talks, is every major shift has been about speed, cost reduction and speed. Sometimes we get them both at the same time. Sometimes they're one or the other. We get a cost reduction, but we don't go any faster, which is fine. Or we're going faster, but it's not necessarily cheaper yet.
Right.
And I feel like this is maybe the next one where we're going to be feeling the pressure because all the devs are going to be writing code with AI, which in theory is going to improve their performance, which means they're writing more code, shipping more, or wanting to ship more code.
Potentially.
And if we're not using AI ourselves to automate more of these platform designs, platform build-outs, troubleshooting when we're in production and things are problematic and we don't want to spend 3 hours trying to find the source of the problem, if we're not starting to use agents to automate a lot of that and reduce the time to market, so to speak, for a certain feature or platform feature, then I don't think these teams are going to hire more of us to help enable the devs to deploy. What it could end up happening is we end up with more shadow ops, where the developers are so fed up with us not speeding up to if they're going to go 10x, we have to go 10x.
Yeah.
If they're going to go 3x or whatever the number ends up being in the reports, and Gartner puts out like the AI makes it more efficient for developers to code with AI, and the models get better and the way they use it is better. And so they're shipping code faster, and they can do the same speed with 3 times less developers, or they can just produce 3 times more work, which I think is more likely, because if it's the common denominator and everyone has it, then that means every company can execute faster. And they're gonna want to do that because their competitors are doing that.
So that's
a very loaded and long prediction.
That's a hypothesis. And
it
I
is.
think
There's a lot of prediction
It's going to
here.
take some time for us to even chip away at that hypothesis, but it's a good starting point. If we're assuming that is like the hypothesis that organizations are looking at to adopt the tools, that's a great starting point for us to help you figure out what they are, why they are, what they do, and how to use them.
This, by the way, a little bit of that opinion of mine, and there's more to come because I've got a lot more written down that we're never going to get to. But a significant portion of that is actually coming from what I learned this week from analysts whose job it is to figure this stuff out for their organization and their customers.
Interesting.
And so I am a little weighted by their almost unrealistic expectations of how fast we can do this, because we are still humans. An organization can't adopt AI until the humans learn how to adopt AI. And the humans have to go at human speed. So we can't just flip a switch and suddenly AI is here and running everything for us. At least not until we have Iron Man's Jarvis or whatever. Like until we have that, we still have to learn these tools and still have to adapt our platforms to use them and adapt our learning to use them. And that's going to take some time.
And I'd like the parting thought for this is, and here, like you said, there's an under the surface kind of thing happening.
Yeah.
So
It's whispers. It's almost like murmurs and
under the surface.
Yeah.
AI agentic.
AI agents. Agentic DevOps.
Ooh.
This is our ASMR podcast, moment of the podcast.
Like MCP protocol.
Yeah.
You mentioned HA proxy on the previous podcast about load balancing and figuring out the token utilization of GPUs and tokens and all that stuff. And we had a conversation at the Solo booth, and they were talking about having a proxy for an MCP gateway. One of the things that we're seeing the early signs of is these new workloads, right? This agentic kind of thinking around even just executing the agentic platform, if you will. And everything from looking at the tokens and optimizing load balancing to inference endpoints, or MCP doesn't behave the same way as like just an HTTP connection necessarily. And Solo, we were talking to them and they have an MCP gateway. We were seeing a little bit more of a trend on AI gateways. Istio, the project, has an AI gateway. And so this is not just another workload, and it looks like just a web server. And the networking and everything is going to be different. Not dramatically different, but different enough that we need to be aware. Because even if you're not using any of these tools, someone in your organization is probably going to say, oh, we need to integrate this stuff into our software, to our whatever we're delivering, and we'll need to know it even at that layer. So we're going to also cover that component as it relates to the Kubernetes ecosystem and cloud native.
Yeah. I think if we had to do like an elevator pitch for this podcast, it would be, we now have a industry idea around these terms agent, and then it uses an API called MCP to allow us to give more work to these crazy robot texting things that we have to talk to in human language and not with code, right? It's running code, but we're not talking to it with code. And that it can now understand all the tools we need to use, and we can just give it a list of everything I want it to use. Here's my Kubernetes API, here's all my other things that you have access to, and here's my problem, go solve it. And that paradigm 3 months ago, 2 months ago for me, I didn't know existed. And that's why I've been sitting on the sidelines with AI. Like, it's cool for writing programs that mostly work in a demo. It's cool for adding a feature to something I already have, but it's not doing my job as a platform engineer or DevOps engineer.
Right.
It's just helping me write text faster than I can type into my keyboard. And that was not that interesting. That's why you didn't see a lot of me talking about that on this show, because it just wasn't that interesting. This is an interesting topic for ops and for engineers on the platform.
Yep.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, and I love crazy texting robots.
Crazy texting robots. Maybe that's the title, TBD.
All right.
All right. See you soon, man.
See ya.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.